You're here, which means that you've found spirit crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Emily from Emily and Her Stars and Things That Make You Go Woo.
And I'm Andrea from Concrete and Crystals and Spirit Crumbs.
We are back with Inviting Shadow 2025. This is our mega bonus episode. We did in Gaining Light in January, and we covered January through June into July, solstice to solstice. And now we're back because we wanted to really spend enough time and give the second half of the year its due respect with all of the things that are happening in this very busy year.
I feel like the time that comes between them is when we start realizing how much energy there is and how much we have to go through to get there. I think there's a genuine difference in the energy when we're building up to more light and when we're like going down to like the darkness. I do feel like there is a different energy. And I almost feel like with this inviting shadow, it is a slowing down, but like we're getting to the point where we can take a breath as opposed to like the ramping up that I felt for the first half. I feel like the gaining light has been like getting too fire, like we are building up, things are ramping up, and now we're on like the downhill where it's like, okay, yes, it's still very intense at the top, at the peak, but like we're getting to some peace, at least a little bit more of a stability feeling the further we get into the year. But I don't know about you, but that's how I've been feeling it.
I think that really resonates. I think we were nervous. I will speak for myself and say I was nervous about what this year was going to look like and unfold like. As an astrologer, we're dealing with so many unknowns and big transformations and these potent moments that we're like, we don't quite know how it's going to unfold. We just know it's going to be different and likely big. And so I think that there was part of me that was expecting more drama. Is that possible? I look back and I'm like, we've had plenty. And I also feel like maybe it hasn't unfolded as I expected. I think I thought there would be a lot more fireworks in April around the eclipses. That was incredibly potent to be stepping into this brand new Aries energy and era with so many things. But I also think that it's easy to say this in hindsight. There's a feeling of those are brand new energies. It takes them a minute to get ramped up. And things are going to continue to unfold in the next 6, 8, 10, 12 months. Like 25 and 26 are such a package deal that I think it's going to really continue to shape us into the future in ways we don't even quite know yet, because I think we don't have clarity to see the whole picture. I think when you're in the middle of it, it's like you can see your immediate surroundings, but you don't necessarily get the zoomed out version until history kind of looks back at it and puts everything together.
Yeah, it's like when there's individual events happening, you're really focused on like, what do I need to do right now? And I think like even looking at the last few months, I feel like I can see that for myself, how like I wouldn't have been able to predict where I'd be right now or like what I'd be doing, but it seemed really gradual, even though the shifts looking back are like, wow, like I moved, I've like started all these things and like we're already in, the end of May, beginning of June. And like, I wouldn't have been able to predict that. But then, like you said, I actually was prepared. I was bracing myself, for like bigger things to happen and like maybe more disruptive things, maybe things that would have been, maybe a bigger collective impact. And I think that it is happening, like Emily said, but I think also something that I was thinking about when I was tuning into the energy of this episode is that I think we're desensitized to chaos at this point. Like from 2020 to now, that's all we've had. So I feel like we actually get a little bit more, like a little bit more skeptical of the quiet periods. And so, like, it's almost like we're craving more change. It's like, okay, we've been in the chaos all this time. Like, where is all the change? Like, where is all the stuff that's supposed to be happening? You know, it's almost like we're waiting for it. Even though in our own personal lives, maybe we don't want that much disruption, but I feel like in general, it's like, yeah, it's chaos. There's a lot happening, but it's like, I feel like it's a lot of talk, and that's that Gemini energy. I think like what Emily has been telling us throughout the year, like that Jupiter and Gemini, like it really like exaggerates all of like the communication, the information, but it's like, where's the action? Like, where's the stuff? Where's the change? Like, what is matching that? Yes, there's actions happening, but they're not in the direction that we're hoping. So I don't know. I feel like it is a little bit of chaos soup that we've been in. And I'm hoping that this like second half of the year is like where we'll actually start to see it showing up in the tangible world.
That's so, so true. And I think, we talk about astrology when we're looking at Mercury retrogrades or Venus in retrograde, or these things that happen in a short window and feel a little more tangible. And when we're talking about 8 outer planets moving and shifting signs, those are slow burn. Like even Jupiter, okay, it moves once a year, but we've got an entire year to experience that energy and then look back and reflect. We've got Pluto in something brand new. That's going to last 20 years. These are long, low burns that go, they don't necessarily burn hot or bright. These are cold, distant planets, but the energy is there and it's seeping in to everything in ways that I don't think we're even aware of yet. And it's exciting. And I do think we're definitely not through everything that's coming for us in 2025. We're building to a really big moment right after the first, after the solstice in mid-July. We have this powerful moment where Saturn and Neptune are within less than a degree. They're like within minutes of each other, and then Saturn goes retrograde and it backs away. And so you have this almost powerful union of the two of them at like 0 degrees of Aries. It's practically nothing. But what is that ushering in? Even if you take out, if you believe the energy comes in or is transmuted by this, just the symbology of what it means to have so much potent responsibility, the sense of dreams and ideals at essentially the beginning of everything, at the beginning of the zodiac. I think this feels in some ways like the turning of the Mayan calendar. Like this is really going to change generations and what we look like in huge ways, every bit as much and important and powerful as industrial revolutions, as when we were talking about in the Cancer episode of like coming out of working on manors or working for royalty in some way, having people that were in control of you and your life and what you did. And now, when we came out of that, we had to make our own way. And now that we've made our own way, there's going to be another adjustment. So these are big transformative times that are sometimes even hard to put into words of like, here's what happened in 6 months. Well, we've nearly taken down everything that's been normal in the United States government. So that's been super fun. But I also see we have this new collective unfolding, and other countries are looking to what's happening here in ways that are like, maybe we don't want that. Change can be good, but do you really need to burn it down to nothing to start over? Or can you look at things in new ways? So yeah, it's been busy. And I do think that some of the eclipse energy that we thought was maybe going to really unfold in March and April, I still think is going to be part of our story going forward. I think we're going to be tied to those moments in Aries again in September and then again in the spring. It'll kind of repeat and come up in different variations. But yeah, what do you think? What else have you seen play out?
I think for me, it's like I've noticed a lot more about like how I'm experiencing time. Like I think especially May has just been extremely fast. And I think it's that Gemini energy. We talk about this in the Cancer episode, but I think it's something that is a pattern that I didn't recognize until this year. And it's like amplified this year. May, June has always been a very busy time for me, and I feel like it's hard for me to get my bearings. But like, I think this year especially, it's almost like we are expected up and through July to like really clean house. I was talking about the energy of it being a 9 year and the fact that the 9 holds the 1 as well, the new. And it's like you can't, there's no even split of like a time frame where like, okay, the old is done now. Now we're in the new. Like it crosses over a lot. And I think that's why there's so much that feels uncertain or unsteady right now. And I think we can start to see glimpses of what that new energy will feel like and what it is we're moving towards. And I think personally, I'm feeling that a lot. Like I'm starting to see a lot more synchronicities. I think a lot of people probably could resonate with that, where the closer we get to solstice, the more I'm seeing um, little glimpses and connections and things that are leading me to believe that I am in the right direction. And like, I won't know when the, big things are going to happen, but at least I know if I keep doing the things I'm doing now, it's that energy of like doing the small things and you don't know which small thing is going to be like a catalyst for something bigger. And I think rather than thinking, oh my gosh, it's been 6 months and I still don't know what I'm doing, I think instead of leaning into that energy, thinking, okay, but there's a lot of small things that have shown up that if I wasn't paying attention, I might have missed, or I may not have realized the significance of them. And I think the more we celebrate the small things, the more we're going to be making space for the bigger things. Because when you have the vision in mind of like what things could be, it's easier to let go of the things that you don't really need anymore. And I've really found myself doing that with my energy. I have the habit of like planting a million seeds and feeling like I'm going to miss out if I don't apply to like every show that's out there, or like take every client that comes my way and like say yes to everything. But the thing is, I think I mentioned this in another episode, then when all of those seeds start to sprout, I'm like, oh my God, I can't possibly harvest all of this. Like, I can't water all of this. Like, I'm going to run out of fertilizer, Like, I only have so much energy. Whereas this year, I was very intentional. And I found things that were in my immediate community, things that were in places where I wanted to make more connections and I wanted to spend more time. And where the work that I'd be making would be more connected to me and what I want to make. And I think that has actually, as much as it hasn't created any giant big leaps, I don't think that they're far away. I feel like it's like every small thing at least feels intentional. And I think that's the energy that I've been noticing, is that I've been able to like notice my own patterns and like stop myself from going back into them. I think that's one thing that this energy this year has really been showing me, is like we're all burnt out. Nobody wants to go back to the way they were doing things before. And it's a lot easier to say no than it was previously. So I think that's the thing that I think is preparing us for these big things that are coming up, these bigger energies. It's like we're going to have space for whatever that's bringing if we're protecting our own energy now.
The idea of boundaries, I think, has been a big one. And what we're willing to say yes and no to has been probably the idea with Pluto and Aquarius. The metaphor and the scene I get kind of unfolding is that it's okay to not be part of the crowd, right? With Pluto in Capricorn for so long, it was like, what am I letting down? Or what if I don't do this, then the structure that I need to provide my job, to provide my car, to do whatever it was that it brought to your life, it was worth it to kind of self-sacrifice in some way. And I think this year the big message has been, we're no longer really willing to do that. It's like, okay, I'm fine to let that crumble. And yeah, my car doesn't define me, my job doesn't define me. Like, even I see this particularly playing out with celebrities not holding as much power as they used to. We're like, yeah, we just don't care anymore. So that a little bit more sense of individuality. And I also feel with the North Node in Pisces, we've really leaned so hard into trust. And it's like, yes, I know I'm saying no and I'm putting this boundary up, but I also have more trust than we've ever had before behind us that it will be okay. I think there is still a lot of fear and uncertainty without a doubt, but we also are recognizing that the things we've done haven't worked. And so we have to pivot. We have to try something new. We entered the first part of the year with so many things in retrograde. I mean, we went from Mars being in retrograde in Leo and Cancer for 4.5, 5 months. And then it finally comes out of retrograde. We still have to get through that energy. So we're just starting to kind of get into new energies. Venus go retrograde, that lasted a month and a half. Like, it's just been a lot of like we want to move forward, we want to progress, but there were just enough things kind of keeping it out of reach and holding it back. Now, the full moon total lunar eclipse in Virgo was also part of initiating that. Like, we've let go of the Aries and Libra eclipses, which we've had for the last couple of years, which I think really highlighted to us where we had put others ahead of ourselves. And so it became easier then to move into those structures of, yeah, no, I have to stand up and do this thing for myself. And while it's felt really dreamlike and like, oh, I have this vision, I have this idea, because we've had so many planets in Pisces, that now that they're moving into Aries and into fire, little one by one, we're getting so much air and so much fire that it's like, okay, I can actually make this a reality. Or if I don't, then I'm going to, something is going to happen. I'm going to move in a new direction. We've talked so many times over the course of this year about the getting on the highway. We're all in our little cars, marching on the highway, and it took a while. We were on the on-ramp for a while. And now we're driving down the road. And it's like, well, I'm okay to get off. I'm okay to get off this crazy busy highway. And I'm going to take a scenic by road, and I'm going to miss some of the construction, and it's going to be okay. Maybe I'll be late. Maybe I won't get there. It's okay. But the experience I'm going to have instead is going to fulfill me more than sitting in that traffic jam and going the route that I depend on and rely on. And no, I'm just not as excited to do that anymore. So I'm all about the road trips this year. And I do think that, these energies are just so conjoined. We talked about this being the year of the snake and how it's shedding its skin in particular in 2025. And then there's a feeling of where everything is new and it's touchy and it's tender and you're not sure and you're a little nervous and a little hesitant. But there's still the expansion and growth underneath it that make it feel purposeful in some way.
I totally feel that energy of it being purposeful. And I think like collectively and individually, I think we can see how like we're making choices that are based on those big dreams. And I think the moon card has come up a couple times, and it came up last month, I think in Gemini. It came up near the end of Gemini season. And one of the key messages that I always take away from the Light Seers Tarot one is that like you're diving deeper within yourself, but you're finding the spark. So I think that so is like Pisces into Aries, where it's like, yeah, you're doing the deep dive, but it's so that you can start again, so that you can find what's going to drive you to make that change. Because we can have all the dreams in the world, but if there's nothing that really like lights a fire under you to do it, then it's always just going to be a dream. But I think that North Node in Pisces, that's actually my North Node is in Pisces. So I've been feeling it a lot. Like I said, I'm the guinea pig for the universe this year. Like all of the energies are like I'm a Capricorn, the Pluto movement has impacted me. Like there's a lot of these movements that like really like transits that are really impacting my life. So like every time we do one of these episodes, I'm like making notes like, oh yes, Emily had mentioned in the Cancer episode like that there was an influence from like the summer of 2014, and that was when I had a car accident and I was off work for 6 months. But it was an opportunity that I didn't really take to like change my career path. It took me a couple of years to figure out that that's what was trying to happen. Whereas now I'm in the middle of a change where I'm just open. I'm kind of in the in-between right now, waiting to see what's going to like shift for me in terms of like my art stuff. So I do think that like that openness and that ability to pivot and to be, a little bit tender, but still trusting, I think is going to be really at the forefront, I think, for a lot of us collectively and individually. But there is that need to like trust and to allow things to unfold, but also to use that spark, like to really, as soon as you feel that catalyst energy and you feel that need to go do something, to take action and to actually work on it, because nothing's going to become a reality if we don't actually take steps towards it and trust that it can happen. Because I feel like sometimes if we don't believe it can happen, then we have no incentive to do it because we feel like it's futile or like there's no point. But if we believe that it is the point, the dream is the point, that is the whole reason to be moving forward, then we're more likely to actually take those steps. And I think when I look back, like I do a lot of those things where it's like gradual, where I just do them as they come up. And then I look back and I'm like, wow, I've actually done a lot this year, even though it seemed like all small things. The connections and like the momentum that comes from the small things is what moves you forward. And so the sooner you start listening to all the little things that light you up, the sooner the sooner you can get to like the bigger things.
So I wanted to reflect back on where the planet sort of have come from, but importantly, where we are right now. So starting on solstice, this is June 20th, 2025. Mercury is in Cancer. This is an opportunity for us to really be leaning into that landscape of what do we need mentally to feel safe and secure and connected. What are our emotions trying to tell us? You can start to feel like maybe they're overwhelming, or are you trying to make them logical? What are you doing with them in some way? We have Venus and Taurus, and Venus is so happy here. And what's interesting is this is kind of, I feel like, bringing in some smoothing energy after Taurus housing Uranus, shocking and challenging and electrifying and all these things for the last 7 years. To have Venus kind of follow it out, it felt almost like a nice conditioner on some frizzy hair at the ends. Of like, how can we calm this energy? But it's also reminding us of what's important in day-to-day life. I think so much of Taurus represents, waiting for the garden to bloom, being in the presence of the plants and caretaking for things before you have the harvest. You have to still enjoy the in-between steps. And we have Mars in Virgo, and thankfully, this is like the first new energy Mars has experienced since last fall. So I think this is a particularly important thing to make note of because for the first time, we have new motivation outside of Leo and Cancer. And in Virgo, it's asking us to get very task-oriented, to find mentors, people we align with, to share our ideas and knowledge with others and help them in some way. Now, this is where we get all of the new energies coming in. We've got Jupiter brand new into Cancer. It's at 2 degrees. So this is going to be with us for the next year. We don't totally know how this is going to unfold, but it is actually our only water, aside from Mercury. Once Mercury moves out of Cancer, it will be the only water planet we have in the entire sky. Now, Saturn is at 1 degree of Aries. We'll be going retrograde and we'll be backing into Pisces, but it's giving us that preview of what our responsibility is going to be to self-identity, to how we take action. What are we willing to fight for? And also, if we're willing to fight with it for how long? What is sustainable? Are you going to burn out? How can you bring responsibility to the long, slow burn in some way? We have Uranus at 29 degrees of Taurus. So it's right there at that pinnacle, massive moment. And to kind of give it a comparison, we talked a lot when Pluto was in the final degrees of Capricorn, and it was kind of when some of the biggest fireworks went off. We were like, well, I guess that's changing and this is changing. This is part of that too. But what I think is particularly interesting to see what happens with Uranus and Taurus here is, and I've said it a lot, is the weather. I think we're going to have an unusual weather pattern this summer. I know particularly here where I live, we've had more rain than normal, and our drought has completely shifted, but that has opened up drought for people that don't usually experience it. We've also had several volcanoes. Mount Etna just erupted yesterday in Italy. We have Kilauea in Hawaii that's now active again. We have, I believe, the glacier in Switzerland collapsed about a week ago and buried a town. So we're starting to have some very interesting global weather events, weather patterns. Things are unfolding in interesting ways in terms of the Earth's energy. This also can in some ways affect our money. There's been a lot of talk about moving to a global online money transaction system, doing away with physical currency. Here in the States, the administration is really pushing for Bitcoins and meme coins and all sorts of things. So I think this is also going to play into what the markets do, how they react, because there will also be a retrograde in and out of Taurus this year. So that'll be coming in the fall. We have Neptune at 2 degrees of Aries. It's new for us. Neptune's been in Pisces for, it's been there 14 years. And I was very happy in Pisces. Our dreams, there was a lot of addiction. We were very interested in drugs, psychedelic, metaphysical, our interest in religion. All of these things have been played up. And now all of a sudden we're dropping into Aries, and it's a little bit more back into the body, back into the now. This is back into masculine energy, out of the feminine dreamy, but I also think that gives the feminine a new power in some way. Then we have Pluto at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So it's just in those beginning years, and it's not going to retrograde out. It's going to continue to stay in, even though it will go retrograde this fall. And the North Node in Pisces, the South Node in Virgo. So that kind of takes us to where we are right now. We're in a moment of what do we want to be when we grow up? What do we believe? Our beliefs are kind of being rocked to the foundation, and we're not quite sure what to do about it.
I feel like that really resonates because where I left off with the cards in our gaining light was in June with the world, number 21, which is the end of the zodiac. And I feel like that energy of like, where are we going to go? What's next? It's like we've completed this cycle. We've kind of gotten everything we can get out of this current system. You know, there's a lot that has to change, but we're kind of in the middle. And I think there's a lot of opportunity that comes from this. It's like the acknowledgement that it's a constant cycle. That we don't just, it's not linear. It's not like now we have to like jump and start over somewhere else. Like we're still in this like cyclical energy. And I think that's why when I talked about the 9 year, how like it doesn't just go 9 and then that ends and then magically we're hopping into the 1 year and the rest is all history, you know? It all overlaps. And I think as humans, we know that there's no like, other than birth and death, everything in between, no clear-cut energy. Everything in between is very fluid. And I think the more we can embrace that, the more we can still take time to celebrate. And I think we're waiting for some magical, huge, one all-encompassing ending before we move on to the beginning. And then we're never going to have that. So you're never going to celebrate anything. You're never going to acknowledge anything. And I think that's where the world is coming in. It's like this opportunity to be like, wow, I actually made it through this cycle. I've made it to this point. I can feel like there's something on the horizon. And I know that it's still, even if I haven't had a huge epiphany or like a big change in these 6 months, it's still a lot of growth. There's a lot that I have done. There's a lot that if I look backwards, there's a lot that I've accomplished this year. And I think we have to acknowledge that like every accomplishment deserves to be celebrated. And we don't do that very often. And I think because we have so much influence in the last couple cycles of the Fool, that comes right after the World. And it's funny, I said to Emily, I haven't looked at gaining light. Usually I look every month and check in like the last couple. Haven't had a chance to do that this year because it's been so wild. But I was like, that is actually more crazy that like now I'm looking and saying, yeah, we went from the World and now we're having a lot of influence of the Fool right now. So that timing actually really checks out because they overlap. So going from May into June, we have a lot of that energy, even June into July. Like there's a lot of the Fool energy and it's overlapping with this ending. It's overlapping with this celebration. And I think because we don't take that time, it's the universe reminding us like we're never going to have this moment again. Our entire world is changing. Why not enjoy this version, this in between where we're mostly online and we are just starting to put ourselves back into in-person stuff and we're starting to start new cycles. I think for me, that's one of the biggest shifts that's happening is I would have said, I was telling Emily, we were talking about it earlier, like I thought maybe, you know, in 2021, 2022, I would have thought that I would have stayed online and did only online work the rest of my life. I love just chilling at home and being by myself and in my own energy. But I think more than anything in the last year, what I've realized is through the retreats that I do, through Spirit School, and from being able to do a few things in person for art shows, I think that I'm recognizing how much I really do like being in the studio environment. I like being in a teaching energy where I can be inspired by other people doing things. And as much as you can kind of like share as much as you can online, it's not the same as like being in person with people and having face-to-face conversations. And I think that is part of the completion of the cycle I'm recognizing is like, yes, I still love that other part of things. I don't have to let go of it completely. I can still be in that world, but I can also celebrate the fact that now I've recognized something new, a new direction. And I think it's like the yes and energy that you may hear this after this if you're listening to Cancer after this, but that's something that I think we have to recognize that like everything is fluid. There is no end and starting point to every cycle. We don't get a notification on our phone like, oh, you ended this cycle. Like, congratulations, it's complete. Everything's wrapped up. It's all clean, starting fresh. Like, that's not how life works. And so we need to just be able to improv more. We need to be more comfortable in that movement of like just going with the flow. And I think with me being so Capricorn, the fact that my North Node is in Pisces, I think it's helping me a lot because I mean, I didn't stand a chance really. I have so much Capricorn energy. My South Node is in Virgo. It's like that's my default is to make a spreadsheet and plan things. But the more I've embraced that, like whatever comes up, I'll just do it. Anytime in my life when I look back on it, that is actually good for me. My Jupiter is in Aries too. So it's like, obviously, if I look back historically, it's like anything. When you look back at your own life with that world energy, if you look back at all the accomplishments you have had, it's a lot more than if you look at what you did last week, you know? But it's like you only have so much in your immediate lens to look at. But if you zoom out again and look at where you were when we started gaining light compared to now, it's worth celebrating.
One of the things that I find fascinating about Saturn moving into Aries is, of course, like we get the sense of responsibility, but it also is such a pivotal moment in our lives. We get our first Saturn return at about 28 and a half, 29 into 30. We get it again right around age 60. And it tends to be this moment where you look around and it's like, is that all there is? Like, is this what I want to do? I did all this work to maybe get this job. Am I really, or education? Am I happy with it? Do I want to get married? Do I want to retire? But one of the things that was coming up were all of the people who were born underneath that feeling of Saturn in Aries. And I just have to say that Joe Rogan is experiencing his Saturn return, and nothing makes me laugh harder because he is announced not too long ago, since he's moved to Austin from LA, that he is now going to church, which generally is a pattern that comes up before someone is accused of something inappropriate, we'll say. There seems to be a little bit of a pattern there of, let me seek redemption before everyone starts throwing stones at me. So it'll be interesting to see why that religion is coming up for him right now, where he's, looking to expand his life in new ways. But some of the people that also have this energy are like George Carlin. I mean, he was always willing to push the edge and the buttons. Malala, who survived being shot in the Taliban. I mean, she's coming up on her Saturn return, so I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing or seeing her again. Evel Knievel, Tony Hawk, Francis Ford Coppola. These are all figures that just push the edge of things enough that we collectively look at things in new ways. So I do feel very much that fool energy. I think that's exactly what it is. It's this trust fall of, I have to do this. I have to. Or else there's a part of me that I lose by not fulfilling some of that energy. One of the other things I wanted to mention before we move on really fully into July, at the end of June, this is just past solstice, we have the new moon in Cancer. I think this is a really beautiful energy to work with this year. I encourage you to. It's exact early in the morning on June 25th. I think it's around 6:30 in the morning Eastern. So totally can work with it the evening of the 24th into the, midday of the 25th before it really starts to wane. But this is giving you that opportunity to kind of get in touch with that gentle inner emotional landscape, right? Without anything else around you, where Where do you just love people and love to do things for others, but also where has that maybe led you astray? Have you given too much? Just kind of a nice touchstone moment. Because the very next day, on the 26th, Mercury moves into Leo. And this is going to be about shining a light on you and your projects and your inspiration and your creativity and all the things that light you up. So I encourage you to, get a little bit clear. See.
I think it's fun to have these anchor points, like these different points in the year. We forget that like every month we have a new moon and a full moon. Like sometimes I forget like the energy that we can really harness from that. And I feel like with me having Cancer moon, I feel like I really do want to tune into that energy. But yeah, I feel like there's so much this month. Like we did go through Cancer season, so I have a bit of a heads up on some of the energies. But I do think that like for looking at where we are from gaining light, like a lot of those key things that you were talking about, especially when you were mentioning Saturn and Aries, the phrase that was coming up to me was the responsibility to take the leap. I and my energy, anybody who knows human design, my incarnation cross is individualism. I'm supposed to just do things differently and it triggers people. That's literally my first two, my top two gates are 38 and 39. And it's like very much like provoking people basically just by existing. And because I do take leaps very effortlessly, not that they don't take effort, but like I trust them before I think about them. And that's how I know something is the right choice. If I just know it and I can't explain it, it's that full energy. Like I do things that like don't make sense, but it makes so much sense to me. And because that's my natural way of being, that is my like, purpose in life. I think I resonate with that a lot. It does feel like a responsibility. Like if I don't do this, if people are looking at me, even though I don't want to be, I'm also a 5-1. So I'm also like the heretic. Like I literally being so Capricorn, having all of this energy on me. It's like having a giant spotlight where people are like, so what do we do next? And even though they're not saying that to me, that's the energy I feel. There is that responsibility that weighs on me. And not in a bad way. It pushes me forward. Like it's something that I need. Like I need that energy of like the push to keep going. But there is that sort of sense of the responsibility that I think people, especially with that side, like with Saturn and Aries, like they can't help it. They have to do it. And I think if we all can kind of acknowledge that this is an opportunity that came up in Cancer season as well, like it's an opportunity to like, we're not going to experience this energy the same way again. So like while it's here, if you feel that spark inside you to do something, like take advantage of it. Like it is something like Saturn usually is kind of a wet blanket, like I feel like it can be a bit of a wet blanket sometimes. So while it's got some fire to it, like take advantage and enjoy it.
I do love the wet blanket. I think it's very true. Saturn can be like the biggest party pooper. Okay, so let's talk about July. Let's jump in. Do you want to talk tarot first or do you want me to do the planets first?
I can do the tarot first so we can leave it as a let's see how accurate my random intuitive feelings are. But I actually pulled for July the 3 of Cups, which actually was a card for March as well. And this has happened the last couple times where there are repeating energies. And I think because it was for eclipse season, like when we were going to be experiencing those energies, when we had this anticipation of all of these things coming to fruition, that like, as we have mentioned before, like it didn't feel as intense as we were expecting. But I think the fact that July has so much energy to it, the fact that the 3 of Cups came up again, I think it's a reminder that like the same themes that were coming up then are still true now. Like Emily was saying, it does take a while for the planets to get going and fully be in their energy. And I think that's what we're experiencing now. And so the 3 of Cups, when you're in the middle of chaos and there's like huge changes, you don't think like, oh, 3 of Cups, let's celebrate. But what I think it's telling us is that we have to choose the people around us really wisely. And then we do have to lean into celebration. Like if we're continuing from the world, that's also kind of a 3 because it's the 21. So it still makes a 3. So there still is that energy of community and connection and being able to reflect with one another. And I think because we have a lot in July, there's we talked about Canada Day and Independence Day in the Cancer season episode. And I think because we have these expected times to be celebrating, even if we don't personally celebrate them that much, I think any opportunity we have to go into community, to be in the family energy of celebrating one another, and again, that need to celebrate as things come up, I think we'll actually find that like the connections we make that are really close have a really deep reaching impact. And I think because there's so much going on around us, we need to ground ourselves. And even if it seems counterintuitive, I think finding joy in whatever places we can is going to be really crucial to our ability to move through this period, because I think a lot of people are going to be experiencing some, grief when they have to make changes and when they have to let things go. So having the people that really see you and support you really close is going to be helpful, and it's going to be invaluable. It feels to me like the kinds of relationships, even if they're new relationships or pre-existing ones, the relationships that we really see highlighted in July, I think are going to be the ones that are carrying into the next chapter. Because if we're going from like the world, like that completion, and we're in the Fool energy, we're at the beginning of something very new. There's a lot of new beginnings happening. So whoever is with you on this path right now is going to be influential in helping you continue and seeing your vision with you and being able to remind you when you need to see that vision a different way. And I think even though, when I first pulled these cards, I almost put them back because it's like 3 of Cups really for July. Like there's so much happening. But at the same time, it was like, no, we do need that. We can't always be at a 10, we can't always be matching the collective energy, or we would completely burn out and never get anything done. I think if we're meant to be in a sustainable path for ourselves, we do need to build in these moments of celebration, these moments of friendship. And I think because of the Aquarius influence, like our friendships and circles may be changing a lot in the next, 6 months. And I think they already have probably this year. And I think the people that I think there's always people that we know will always be in our lives, but maybe the friendship is quiet for a while, then it gets loud again for a while. And I think there may be a lot of that fluctuation. So there's some people that may stay steady, but there may be people that you've never met before that all of a sudden now you connect with, and they're the key to like that next chapter for you. And so the energy around like unexpected connections, even though the 3 of Cups is typically the people closest to you, I have a feeling that it's like you're going to be meeting the people that will be closest to you for the next chapter. So there is an openness to this card, but also a reminder to like really take the time to, even if it's just small little gatherings and like, little friend dinners, or like having a couple people over just to hang out for a while, to sit outside, enjoy the weather, like ground yourself in patios, like the things that bring you joy, like just find those moments, because if you don't schedule them in and you don't create them, then you're going to get to the end of the summer, you're going to get to the end of the season just exhausted, because you need that to fill you back up again. So as much as there's a lot of other energies, there's a lot of like swords and wands and a lot of fire and, that sort of energy that's been around. We need the cups. Like, again, like Emma said, there's not a lot of water energy happening right now in the outer planets and the bigger planets. So we do need to really savor those emotional, intuitive moments when they're available to us.
One of the patterns I've noticed, a lot of times nurses tend to be Cancer. And the thing I find interesting about that is you were talking about needing to see your own vision or surround yourself with the people who can help you to see that vision. And that's exactly what a nurse does. They're holding you to this vision of health, of getting better, of knowing what you need to heal, and being there as your cheerleader and walking beside you, despite what other grief may be going on. You may be grieving the loss of something that your body is no longer able to do, but you're looking to a future where something is going to be possible. And I do think that we are collectively going through a grief. I think that some of what Jupiter is going to bring up for us is acknowledging it and maybe spending the time to process it. We've talked about, like, even in conversations with strangers, will be like, oh, well, that was that pre-2020 or post-2020. Like, there's just it's such a definitive date for everyone because we went through this collective change. And we are grieving, or maybe I think we've been hoping and waiting for the moment that things went back to that reality, back to what we were before we were sick, quote unquote, to bring in the nurse piece. And instead, it's like, no, this is our new reality. This is a new chapter. And we have to stop looking back quite so much and look to the future to see what's coming up, what's coming forward. But it takes sitting a moment because I don't know that all of us have really come to that realization, or at least that with the idea of what that grief looks and feels like. With it also comes opportunity. So there's, the eternal optimism that Aries carries is like, oh, but it could go wildly amazing. It could be better than we ever hoped. And it's inspiring to have so many planets in Aries pushing us towards that, while also reminding us that you have to take the time and the space to understand your emotions. We can't always burn through them. And so if this is the only planet that's encouraging us to be in water, then really take the time to sit with it and be in that water. Now, Saturn in Aries, part of what's happening and coming up in July, at the beginning of the month, of course, we were talking about Independence Day for the United States. We have Canada Day. We have all of these things. And July 4th is actually a really kind of spicy day, particularly in the US. We have Venus entering Gemini. That's just going to expand communication. Things are going to go even louder in some ways. But at the exact same time, Neptune is going to go retrograde. Neptune had thankfully been in Aries, so we've had that optimism, but it's going to back into Pisces. So we're going to back into some of those emotions and feelings later in the fall. Now we're building at this point towards this big crescendo at the middle of the month, which is, it's like, could not be more perfectly split in the year when it shows up. But it's this moment where Saturn and Neptune are within less than 1 degree with each other. It's this very potent energy. And it's really about revolutionizing this idea around like, what is victim mentality? How can we blur structures? But some of that can also feel like, how do I work in new ways without compromising who I was? How much of that boundary do I allow to flow? So we're coming up to this moment in the middle of the month where we're going to start to feel uncomfortable enough that whether or not the shift comes externally or internally, it's going to reach kind of this pinnacle moment. Now it's going to back off and away from each other just at almost the exact degree until they meet up again next year. So this is again a preview in July of what will be exact in 2026. So we have this package deal between the 2 years. But we've got Uranus moving into Gemini, and this is going to happen on July 7th. And this is such a big one because Uranus has been in Taurus for 7 years. And just to speak sort of on a personal level so that you can maybe see how this has come up for you, this is pre-COVID. For me personally, being a Taurus sun, I've had this underlying shake to my identity, to my personal belief, to my structure. I am a traditionally trained graphic designer. I'm an artist. I've always done things with my hands, and my connection to spirit was very physical. And when Uranus hit Taurus, and I can look back on this now, I suddenly had an interest in astrology, in having mediumship develop for me. All of these things unfolded and have completely changed now, 7 years later, the trajectory of where I'm at. Would I change what I've gone through? Probably not. Was it comfortable? Probably. It's been a big chapter in my life. So to say that having Uranus change signs is going to be big, this is pivotal. This is big for so many people. Now, Uranus moving in is going to immediately comes into a trine with Pluto in Aquarius. And trines are opening opportunities in ways that we didn't necessarily see, right? You think of a triangle, and any firm structure that's built with triangles is very secure, right? There's that equal force on all sides. But it's going to also increase the pace of things. There's going to be a feeling, because we've got now Aquarius air energy and we've got Uranus in air energy, and they're working together. Ugh. Are we changing our mindsets? Are we changing literally how we think the brain, or how we know the brain works? Like, I just feel like there's going to be some sort of medical information, something about, is it telepathy? What is it going to be that's going to become much more mainstream and something that we talk about? This also, Uranus moving into Gemini, was the start of the Revolutionary War. Now, keep in mind, that was a very different time than we're in now. The other planets were in different position, but there's this feeling of wanting to stand up, right? This needing things to change. There was also, we were in the Civil War during this. We entered into World War II. The last time this transit happened in the 1940s. I don't think it's by coincidence that we're now looking at what's happening in Gaza. And what are we doing with the remnants of the fallout of World War II? How are we being responsible with moving people who are affected on a day-to-day basis? I think that's where the Pluto and Aquarius can maybe help us break that down, where before we might have grouped everyone. Aquarius is like, but are there groups? And there could be multiple groups, and not everybody fits into a group. So we'll see how that, takes us forward. Lincoln used a lot of extra liberty, so to speak, to make things work. So did FDR. He's the only president who was elected 4 times, and is the reason why we have limits now. So will things be pushed to the boundaries a little bit? Entirely possible. Some other things to kind of keep an eye on. Gemini also rules short distance travel. So we're going to have kind of an explosion in trains. It's possible. Are we going to connect more in a universal language? Are there going to be something about the way we communicate with each other? How is AI going to affect that? We've even talked about drones, because drones can go short distances and be in the sky and communicate. So there's all sorts of things in terms of that. There's also possibilities around new social media platforms starting to come out, new ways for us to connect. Really will usher in a new way of thinking, and this is going to last for a number of years. Like, is the breakdown of how we've been working with money going to transfer into a digital realm? Does that mean that then air somehow becomes valuable? What are we actually paying for? What are we charging? And I think in terms of aesthetics, just because I like to think about how the art and things are affected, it's entirely possible that we have a throwback, a kickback to the atomic age, and some of that very early mid-century aesthetics movement and art will be very different than what it's been. Now, to round out July, we have a full moon in Capricorn. Great opportunity for you to check in with your resolutions or anything that you've been working on for this year, and in particularly to let go of what is maybe no longer feels in alignment. It's okay. It's worth it to adjust or make room where you need to. On the 13th, Saturn is going to go retrograde. So this will slow some things down. And while it might feel frustrating, I think it's really there to help you build much more solid foundations. It's going to retrograde back into Pisces later in the fall in mid-September. So allow this 4.5 months to play out for you and slow. Like, if our communication is going well, if our minds are, because you have a million ideas, how can you slow that down in the physical in some way? Saturn wants to make sure those structures are there. Then we have at the middle of the month, the biggie with Neptune. Now, Neptune is going to be nearly conjunct with Saturn. Now, conjunct is when they share the same space in the sky. So they're going to be less than 1 degree apart. We're talking just minutes of meeting up with each other before Saturn goes retrograde. And what's really important about this conjunction, it's this feeling of reality meeting up with illusion and kind of coming to this crescendo, this crash together. So are we going to suddenly see things clearly? Like, is something going to be uncovered? On the other hand, are we going to finally see past something that has been an illusion? There's a lot of talk around, will this be the point that AI becomes undetectable? That like we'll cross this threshold where suddenly we won't know the difference. Because right now we're still at a point where we can pick out like, oh, that has too many fingers. There's not real words, or I can tell that that's a fake voice. But are we going to get to a point where we can't? And what does that mean for illusion and reality? Something to keep in mind is that traditionally this connection between Saturn and Neptune is that's been a collapse in the Soviet Union in some way or another. St. Petersburg, the capital, was founded under a near perfect 0-degree conjunction. And Putin was actually born under alignment. So I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of things happening over there right now. Ukraine just launched that very effective drone assault. So, you know, what can unfold? I think we'll see some bigger things through the middle of the year. Now, that being said, this meetup is then going to fade and we are going to experience it again next year. So if it doesn't all come apart now, we got time. We've got the 2-year package deal. And then to round out the month, we'll have Mercury going retrograde. We'll have the sun entering Leo, a new moon in Leo. Chiron goes retrograde on the 30th, and Venus will move into Cancer. So there's a little bit more of an emotional undertone towards the end of the month, but really kind of that bell ringing crescendo in the middle that I feel like everybody will just kind of be buzzing from a little bit.
I feel like that energy of that bell ringing, that collective energy really resonates with the next card, because for August, I pulled the Hierophant, who last year came up in both. I think it was the last month I think it was June and December. And I think it keeps showing up because it represents the traditional, it's like the traditional ways of being, the traditional ways we teach things, the traditional ways we, you know, structure the way we learn and the way we share wisdom. And I think because we've had so many big structural shifts happening in the world, government, education, like even here, like we've had 2 elections this year, but we've also had a lot of shifts happening with our post-secondary, our like universities, who's allowed in, are we bringing people from like international students has been a huge conversation here, how they, taking them away actually takes away a lot of the funding for the schools. And there's just a lot that is tied into that. And I think even when we think of on a spiritual level, there's been a collapse of like parts of the spiritualist church. And, there's been a lot of cults being called out. And I think the more we look at the way we try to organize and like, come up with collective ways of thinking, I think we are realizing more with this Aquarius influence and with a lot of the energy in the world of people coming into a stage of life where they are experimenting with their own spirituality, with their own wisdom. They're finding like their intuition is a lot louder, even if they haven't been in the world of like development before. It's just this inner knowing that I think a lot of people, and even people, when we talk about like the energy of like a lot of Gemini energy, I think when there's more information out there, there is more opportunity for people to find new information and to change your mind. I think that's one thing that Gemini, as much as we've been like joking and saying that it's like chaotic and like as earth signs, it's a lot. But I think something that it helps with is being able to change your mind, being able to see another way of thinking. And I think because there's so many people seeking more information, that's why it's very dangerous to have people who are trying to recruit people to a certain way of thinking. And I think it doesn't matter what that is. If you're trying to convince people to believe what you believe rather than just provide information that people can take or leave, I think there's a very big difference. And I know there's like a lot of different, again, a lot of different perspectives on like, yes, we need to have some sort of code. And that's where I think the judicial systems are under a lot of, scrutiny. And there's a lot of conversation around them, especially in the United States. Who listens to them and doesn't listen to them, and like how that impacts the collective. And I think that's where a lot of that revolution energy has to come together. Like we have to say, okay, maybe we don't all have to believe all the same things, but we have to believe in some core things. And I think the fact that the Hierophant has showed up a few times now in the last 2 years, every 6 months at least, it's been showing up. I think that is also a sign that like we are all learning and adjusting and evolving our beliefs about ourselves, about our own wisdom, about how much we know. I think sometimes you don't know how much you know until you teach it, until you hear a conversation happening where you're like, that's not true. Like, I think I actually have some information that might be helpful that like actually perhaps even just so you can consider it. I'm not telling you you have to change all of your beliefs, but you should know maybe this piece of information, and even if it's in the spiritual realm, like if you have been doing a lot of development, maybe you don't realize how much you know about how people can learn to connect with their intuition. And maybe the people that you know around you that are just sort of starting to have a bit of an awareness that they're connected to something else, maybe they may have questions that you can answer. Maybe you could teach a class before you think you're ready to. And I think there's just a lot of possibility coming out of this really tumultuous month of July, where there's a lot of big shifts happening. There's a lot of potential for overnight changes for things. And I think the more you can learn to trust yourself, we've been talking about the Fool energy a lot and the ability to do a trust fall. And I think you need to trust yourself. And that's what this Hierophant is talking about. Yes, there are traditions and things that are out there, but we need to relook at those. The interesting thing is, as much as it is a sign of commitment and like structure and all of that, it's a 5, which is inherently one of a number of freedom and change. And so even though, yes, it represents, the way we've always done things, there's that little hint of like, but do we need to do it that way? And like, how could we maybe do it differently? So if you just look at your own life and your own beliefs, and it doesn't have to be in a religious or spiritual way, just in general, like, what do you believe about yourself? Are you still believing that you can't do something, even though it keeps showing up in your path? If you have every person who knows you asking when you're going to do something, maybe you need to take it seriously. Like maybe you do need to start looking at how you could be showing up as a leader or as someone who can be leading the way for something. I think there's a lot of energy changing around us that we can harness and use for our own way of leading people forward. And again, not in like a cult sense of you have to believe what I believe, but maybe I have something that could help you on your journey. And that's collective energy, that sort of Aquarian way of connecting and sharing information.
One of the big highlights kind of here in the middle of the year, May through September, is really the peak of what we're experiencing. I mean, we had the eclipses, we've had all these planets moving into new things. And then by the end of October, things, astrologically speaking, tend to calm down. But here in August, we're still very much in the middle of it. And one of the things that I think is so interesting is that we have Pluto, Neptune, Saturn, and Uranus. They're all 4 aspecting each other. So they're moving slow enough, but they're shooting off these connections all the time. And we've got, of course, like I said, Saturn and Neptune. And this is where we're dissolving some of those structures. But then Saturn and Neptune and Pluto are going to come together in 2026, which I think will help build some of that more solid structure, some of that cohesive one world, one planet idea. And we have Saturn and Uranus sextiling each other. That's going to bring in structure to the revolution and the chaos. So all of these things are playing out in the background. It's like having background music on while there's still a concert. Like you've got earplug in listening to a concert, but there's like classical music happening in the room you're sitting in. It's that feeling of we have to be able to hold multiple things at the same time. And one of the things about Uranus moving into Gemini is that it's really helping us to learn how to change our mind. That things have been so black and white, this or that, right or wrong, that now there's a feeling of we can hold this and that. Both can be true simultaneously. And that's going to, I think, help us find our way to that middle ground in some way. Now, August 6th, we have Mars moving into Libra. That's that partnership, that relationship, seeing things from both sides, bringing in some balance. Mars hasn't been here in quite a while. So again, this is, how are we finding new ways forward? We have the full moon in Aquarius on the 9th, again, highlighting others and communities and differences. August 11th, Mercury finally his retrograde ends, goes back direct in Leo. So we've kind of thought, oh, maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe I do need to look at things in a new way. You've maybe had, something come up to force you to look at yourself in a new way and question that. August 11th is when we have this Saturn sextile Uranus. And again, this helps bring that structure to the things that feel ungrounded in this moment. And we're going to experience it again in 26. But in these earlier degrees, how are we finding the first steps to break some of that ice, some of that hard-edged understanding and beliefs that we've been holding, clinging to in some ways? Like, we've got to get back to pre-2020. I don't want to let it go, because if I let it go, I have to grieve it. And instead, you're really being invited to let those edges be chipped away. I keep having this vision come in of it's like cutting a stone. You can find a beautiful aquamarine or a sapphire, and it just looks like a rock. It doesn't look like anything super exciting until you put all these beautiful facets in it and you cut it and you polish it. I feel like we have the opportunity to be that spectacular, but we have to cut some things out. We all have to make those adjustments. Now, the 22nd, we have the sun entering Virgo. This is I always talk about this as that back to school energy. Like, where's my protractor? Do I have a full box of crayons? Can I buy a new binder and a notebook? We get kind of that excitement to get back to basics. We're tired of eating watermelon and hot dog, going to parties. It's like, I just need to be at home in my own space and bring some normalcy back. That's going to help you to feel some of that grounding energy in later August, and a little bit of that Hierophant. Like, I want to be part, but I also don't. I can see that it's okay and that it can change a little. There's a new moon in Virgo on the 23rd. I loved, if you work with moons, this is a really beautiful one to charge or use crystals and tools with. And then on the 25th, we have Venus entering Leo. And she's made her way from Gemini and Cancer. And in Leo, it's like celebrating self, celebrating art and creativity and falling in love and meeting new friends and being in that early spark. It's the spark of those new connections where some of the other signs sustain it. Leo's like, let's just try it for the sake of trying it. Be fun. So I think overall, August, it might start and be a little crunchy in the beginning and will smooth out towards the end. We'll start to see a little softness return.
I'm glad to hear there's some softness coming, because I feel like at this point in August, we're going to be ready for it. But in September, I pulled the Two of Wands. So we've got a little bit of fire energy, but this card is kind of like the calm before the storm, but not in a bad way, like in a good way. It's like the little nuggets right before you make the leap. It's like when you can see the image is of someone who has like the globe and the picture of the VW bus and everything inside, but they're just looking at the window. They're not doing anything with it yet. And the wand is always pointed like towards the direction that they want to go. And so I think with this energy, it may be because we've had time to reflect, we've had time to look back at what we've been doing, make some adjustments, and we may be a little hesitant to go out there again. It's like if you've just made a big change, we've been talking about it in like May, June, July, if you've been making some really big changes. August may have had you sort of like in that Hierophant energy and that like in-between energy of like looking at what's happening, seeing where you fit in, seeing what you might want to move forward with. And this is like that last little bit where it's starting to build up, where you're at the point where like, oh, I just want to go do it. It's like if you were looking out the window as a kid, seeing the other kids playing in the street, like that sort of energy where it's like you can see other people doing it. And the energy that I feel with this too is it's encouraging you. Like August, September is like back to school energy. Like Emily was saying, it's that energy of like, I want to start something new. It's like this new self-development sort of era. But I feel like even outside of schooling and learning, it also is an opportunity to almost treat it like a new year in a different sense for yourself, where this is a good energy to be in, to be like looking at people you admire and really doing the research. And like, if you're not ready to take the leap quite yet, really doing the research that's going to light you up, that is going to help you find that spark. Like whether it's, if you want to travel, watching a tour of somewhere you want to go, or like if there's something that you want to, a kind of business you're going to open, go and talk to people who are already doing it. Like do something that's going to make you connect to that tangible, physical, I need to do this now sort of energy. If it's already in your mind and you're already dreaming about it and feeling it, this is like the opportunity with it being a 2, which is why I'm feeling this. It's like that partnership energy where you may be doing it alone, but it's like having that other person or energy to bounce something off of. You don't have to share what you want to do, but if you go to people that are already doing something that's inspiring, it's a way of partnering in a way, but just energetically partnering with, whether it's with spirit, doing more meditation, setting an intention with crystals, whatever it is that's going to help you really meet your spiritual and mental plans with the physical energy to do it. It's that fire energy. It's very early on in it, right? Like the Ace of Wands is like the spark, the idea. And we already have that this whole year. We already know what we want to do. It's just a matter of finally admitting it to ourselves and starting to take the steps. And early on, we were talking about, especially in Gemini season, we have all the ideas and we've been trying to do all the things. And okay, what can we start releasing to make space for it? And it's like on this side, we're already now doing the thing. And if we want it to be successful, it's like we are sometimes going to need to get out of our comfort zone. Like we may only be doing the things that are already comfortable, but it's like, I know that if I want this to really take off and I really want to be seen and I really want to have this be sustainable, and that Libra energy too that sneaks in later in the month. I think we take the Virgo energy with that planning and the talking and the, putting ourselves out there, doing the research and really convincing ourselves like, yes, okay, I am sure this does feel worth my time. Even if it is putting a business plan together, like it can be very mundane and simple, but I think for a lot of people, they're going to need the inspiration. It's like they already have all the logic. They've been doing the research, but it's just finding the inspiring pieces that make you act on it. And then the Libra energy of like, yeah, maybe it is talking to new people and like reaching out to the people that have offered to help in the past and like knowing who your connections are. Like I've been talking about to Emily about how I've been meeting people where I'm like, I can see how like the connection could later on help me, or like we could work together towards something, but it doesn't have to be right now. But I think September is going to be when you're going to start being like, okay, now I can see why I made that connection back in the spring, or now I can see why it felt so good to meet this person. Or like when you meet someone new, maybe it's like, oh, now I know why it didn't work until now because I had to meet this person. So I think there's just like a lot of that possibility where it's like the very beginning stages, but it's the exciting part where whatever it is, whether it's a connection with a person, whether it's a video you watch, whether it's, some research you do, there's something that's going to be that catalyst to get you to actually do the thing. And it's going to happen quickly because there's so much connection energy. There's a lot of like really positive moving forward energy between Virgo and Libra. I feel like that transition feels really good this year. I've got a plan. I have the like assurance within myself that I can do it. And now I'm going to meet the person that's going to help me move forward. Like it just feels smooth. So if you're feeling a little like frantic throughout the summer, just trust that like it's smoothing out. It's coming in. Even if it's coming in waves, that's what it feels like. I do feel like in July, there's going to be some stuff that happens where people are like, wow, it's happening already. But it's like a piece of it. And then it's like later in the fall, like is when it's going to pick up and be like, oh, there's the rest of it. And wow, now it's taking off and it has a whole life of its own. But it's like that initial spark might leave you wondering how the pieces are going to fit together. And this is the month when it does come together.
That really fits this month perfectly. And I was looking at the image on the card, and I think there's a feeling of I want to go outside. I want to be out there, but I have to be responsible. I have to be in here just a little bit longer. There's a few more things I need to work on. So September 1st, we have Saturn who's retrograde and it backs right into Pisces. So this is that feeling of responsible, but responsible to my ideals and my beliefs and what I think is out there versus what may be out there, all of those things. And then immediately on the 2nd, Mercury enters Virgo. So how can I bring structure to that? How do I make a plan? You were talking about a bit like, is now the time to write a business plan? Am I looking at how I'm going to start something new? I have the dream and I see the pieces of the structure and I have some of the connections. How do I bring it into something that feels or is tangible to my logic, right? Virgo wants it to be responsible. It's like, yes, I can open the doors to my business, but if I haven't told anyone that I opened, if I don't have any inventory, it doesn't matter that I opened. You have to have those other pieces in place. Now, on the 3rd, I think it's really interesting because Jupiter goes into trine with the North Node. So again, this is opportunity. This is, they're supporting each other in some way. So how are we with Jupiter in Cancer? So that emotional, nurturing, nurse-like energy supporting our North Node in Pisces, our dreams, our visions. So now we've got Jupiter kind of vis-a-vis connected to the North Node in Pisces with Saturn. So there's structure and dream and abundance. There's definitely some things coming in to support you at the beginning of the month. Now on the 6th, Uranus is going to go retrograde. It just barely got into Gemini. It's had a hot minute there. And it's going to be there, it takes it a couple months to back out, but it will eventually back into Taurus. Right now, it's going to be retrograde in Gemini. So how have these new ideas kind of lit a fire or surprised you in some way? Or, we always talk about it being ground shaking or mind altering. It's that lightning. And when it goes retrograde, it may drive those aha moments inward. Like, oh, I thought that in therapy 6 years ago, but I never made the connections. How does it all feel and come together? There's just so many things about September. The 7th, we have a full moon, total lunar eclipse in Pisces. So we're right back here in eclipse season. And this is just going to illuminate, right? A full moon illuminates something. And when you have an eclipse, it's like what's hidden that is suddenly going to become visible. And this is in Pisces. So this is the subconscious, the unseen, the unknown. This is prime real estate for a surprise realization. On the 18th, we have Mercury entering Libra. Again, this brings us the connections to someone that can help us, a willingness to want to listen to someone else's point of view, to hear things in a new way, that balance and justice and harmony of our mindset. On the 19th, the very next day, Venus is going to enter Virgo. Venus is harmony and love and peace and all the things we want to smooth things out. And in Virgo, it gets very task-oriented. What do I need to pack to make this work? What steps do I need to take? And the other thing that I think really plays into what you were talking about, Andrea, Virgo is also the ruler of mentors. Are you becoming a mentor? Are you looking to find a new mentor? How are you sharing that information? And with Venus there, it's going to make it feel like you want to sort of turn and help the next person up, or look to somebody who's in front of you that has the inspiration that suddenly helps you see something in a new way. So I invite you to embrace that energy, particularly in September, because guess what? On the 21st, we have a new moon, partial solar eclipse in Virgo. On the 22nd, Mars, our motivation, that action, is going to move into Scorpio. And in Scorpio, I always think of it as like a lake on fire. It's about finding those inner emotions that you're willing to kind of fight for in some way. What is it triggering? It's wanting to get in and uncover things. It's the detective in some ways. So it's having you do that in a way that's emotionally responsible, that moves your motivation forward. And then on the 22nd, we have the sun entering Libra. So again, this is going to bring some of that softer Venus-like energy, the justice, that will have us much more focused on uniting in some way. And by this point in the year, that could be very interesting. We had enough other upheavals and things happening that I can see it being a little bit of a slowdown, but also like we've gone through so much. How are we now connecting to one another?
That feels like it makes so much sense. And especially with Libra also being like the scales, I feel like the balance and like justice and all of that will be part of that. And I love that the eclipse season is in the same month. I feel like sometimes it like straddles months, and for some reason, even though like it feels better in one sign, but I feel like when it's like within 1 month, it just feels cleaner to me. And I'm like, okay, September, that's the 1 month I have to deal with the eclipses. So I can manage that. Otherwise, even though it's the same amount of time, it just feels longer when it's over 2 months. So I like that, contained. But what's really cool, which I didn't make the connection when we did the Cancer episode, so if it hasn't come out yet when you're listening, just hang in there. You'll see the connection. But I felt like the 6 energy came up a lot. So for October, I pulled the 6 of Wands, which is kind of a card that I referenced, spoiler alert. But the energy of victory is attached to the 6s, and it's specifically in the wand suit. And so this is an image that I've always kept as like the back of my head, like when what I'm working towards is like not so much the being seen part of it, but just the get me achieving whatever it is that like that inner heart goal is, and how it's going to like impact people around me and community. I feel like that is what drives me. It is somebody on a stage in the image, but I think for me, it's more so, as much as there is usually recognition attached, for me, it's just like getting to the point where I feel like it's making a difference is what I feel into. And I think because we've been through obviously quite a bit already in the last 3 months we've described to you, but like in the last year, as a 9-year going into a 1 year, like we're moving towards something brand new. And so when we in Cancer season, we're maybe having a bit of a rocky time where we weren't sure, like we were trusting the process, as they say, but we weren't really believing it until near the end of the month that something might actually come through by the end of July. And so when we had this like August, September period of like the Hierophant and the Two of Wands, where it's like deciding, like, what am I going to believe? Am I ready to be a mentor? I haven't quite put myself out there yet. But this is the energy of like, once you do commit to the thing and you start moving it forward, you'll start to see the actual results, and you'll start to see that like all of the little, like when you look at like a little map with like all the dots connecting and like all of the, things that were just little bits along the way, it's almost like you can see like a photo montage, of like all the moments that like you knew were significant. You just didn't know why. It's building up to this moment. And I think because like, there's Libra season and Scorpio season. There's a lot of very warm, but very like intentional time where, yes, you're connecting. There's a lot of finding the right people, deepening connections, like partnership. There's a lot of energy in October. But then when we get into Scorpio season, it's very deep emotion. It's very charged is the word I'm trying to think of. So it's not something that's just going to be a light, flowy time, but I think it's very positive. It's just that you're going to be very committed. You're going to be very, I don't know what the word is that I'm trying to feel into, but it's like you're going to be almost like having blinders on, where it's like, yes, you're going to be open to connecting with people. There's going to be a lot of balance that you're trying to keep to make sure that you're not neglecting anything that needs attention, but you are able to just really focus on that thing you've committed to. If we look at the major arcana, the 6 is the Lover's card. So it is relationships, but it's also commitments. And I feel like this is mirrored in this 6 energy of the 6 of Wands. It's a fire energy. There's movement to it. You have to move. You have to do something with it. You don't get to victory by sitting around and waiting for it. It's like it's a very like momentous, like forward movement energy. And I think too, like even when you've seemingly achieved the success, you still have to keep going. It's like once you open the business or you've, met the deadline or whatever it is that was important to you at that time, you don't just close up shop and say, I'm done for life. Like you move on to the next thing. You do have to take that moment to celebrate it. We've talked about this, with the World card and like really taking the time to celebrate. But if there's momentum, it's not the time to like party and stay out all night and sleep in and start getting into those habits. It's not time to start being like, okay, I'm just going to celebrate, take the rest of the month off. This is still really good energy to be moving and to be doing things with. And I think we don't know when the next opportunity is going to come up, and there will be periods of rest. We do know that's coming, but because Emily's given us that reminder that 2025 and 2026 are like a package deal, we do still need to keep going. We do still need to keep making movements forward, and the time will come when the peace and the ease and the abundance all come in.
I love the 6 of Wands for this month in particular because, and not ironically, we know spirit works. There's 2 major things that happen right away on October 6th. So the fact that this was a 6 card, I think is very fitting. But we have Mercury entering Scorpio. And this is going to have you willing to kind of dive into some of those areas. But we have a full moon in Aries on the same day. So what is that illuminating for you in some way? I think that's exactly the energy you were picking up. Venus is going to enter Libra on the 13th. And the same day, Pluto goes direct. So it still has to backtrack and go back through that shadow area. But now it's like the transformation will be more external than internal. It's like you've done that work, you've made connections. Like you said, now I have to run the shop, I have to start the thing. But there's a supportive energy coming in for you in that month in some way. The 21st, we have a new moon in Libra. What's interesting on the 22nd, and it's, this is October 22nd, we have 2 important things. We have Neptune retrogrades back into Pisces on the exact same day that the sun enters Scorpio. So here we've gone from very little water in the sky to now we've got Mercury. Let's see, we have Venus is still in Virgo, but we're going to have Neptune, we're going to have the sun, we're going to have Venus in Scorpio by the first part of November. So there's just all of a sudden we go from no water to water. Okay, and what does that do? That does bring us back into that nurturing place, but there is also something about water that is so willing to sacrifice. It's willing to go around the obstacle if it means making it downstream for the greater good, right? And it can beat itself against that rock until the rock changes its mind. There's also a feeling I see coming in where you can, flood the field. It can get to be too many emotions. And I think in some ways we've been in that area of like, we've run across the banks. There are no banks. There's been water as far as the eye could see for a while. And we're just all walking around in our wellies and our rubber boots. Like, who's in charge here? Like, who forgot to open the gate and let the water through? So this will be a moment for us to, again, I think, come back, not so much into the nurturing of the grief, but it's almost like visiting the anger that lies underneath the grief and seeking a little bit of, it's like righteous justice. Interestingly enough, this comes close to a year past the US election. I already think politically speaking that we're going to have a lot of So many tarot readers and astrologers have really looked at July as a turning point for Trump's health. And so I think it will be interesting to see how that plays out through the fall, because by October, I can see there being some righteous anger in how things are going to be settled and sorted. And what do we do kind of moving forward with this energy, whether that happens the eclipses or Uranus or who knows. But um yeah, it's like we're willing to stand up on the stage, but what's happening on that stage? What's the scene that's unfolding kind of in front of us that we're all is holding us all captive in some way? Um, okay, so the 22nd, the Sun enters Scorpio. On the 23rd, we have Jupiter square Chiron. And I bring this one up because Chiron is currently retrograde at this point. This is that point of wounded healer. And it's going to be moving into Taurus in about another year. So we're getting to some of those final degrees of Aries. And having Jupiter kind of battle it out with Chiron, it's like, are you willing to fight for or believe in something better? Because Jupiter's in Cancer at this point. Or are you going to kind of let that wound take you to a place that says, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not willing to stand up for what I believe in. I think some of that tarot card came through in that energy, and this can kind of play out in the background because these are slower moving, so it'll take a little time to build and a little time to release through the end of the month. And then on the 29th, we have Mercury entering Sagittarius. So get ready to get excited. I think Sagittarius is about saying yes to all the opportunities, overbooking, burning out, and then being like, yeah, but it was totally worth it. It was fun. There'll be that excitement moving into November.
That perfectly transitions into my card for November, because for November, I actually pulled a major arcana. I pulled the wheel, number 10. And I feel like the energy of the wheel is that, yes, there's like a big opportunity that's possible, but I think it's equally important, as I talk about every time this card comes up, that we do take the opportunities when they're there, because I think sometimes we wait too long, or we say, not right now. And then by the time we realize we should have done it, or we felt like we should have done it. There's no shoulds really, but by the time we realize it's something we're excited about, the opportunity is no longer there. It's like if a job posting's open, you don't apply, and then they filled it before you have a chance to send in your application. But I feel like this energy in particular, with being at this point in the year, after everything we've experienced, everything Emily just described for October, in terms of like collective energy as well as for ourselves, I think the wheel actually does have this potential to be like that last sort of inspired opportunity. I think sometimes we go between two energies where it's like we can still have like a lot of movement happening and a lot of exciting things, but it's a continuation of like the same thing, just seeing it progress. Whereas this is another influx of like another opportunity or a gift that could come in of, oh, here, I have some funding for you, or look, this person, I think perfect to be a partner for you, or like that sort of inspired, unexpected thing to come in. I think we do have that potential for like the things we've already started to continue. It's not that we have to change what we're doing and throw something out. It's just adding another element that we weren't expecting. And this could be in romantic relationships. It could be friendships. It could be money coming in, like it's anything, right? The wheel is just any opportunity that is in the moment at that time, right place sort of energy. It also feels, because this is around like the holidays, you might be out more, doing more things, there's more of that energy of serendipity possible, where you just end up in a place where somebody, introduces you to someone. There's a lot of that sort of like fun element to it, I think. And I think that's why it feels like it's separate from what you're already working on. It could relate to it, but I just feel like it's not going to be just like a continuation of it. It's going to be something that injects a new energy, whether it's like a slight change in direction or like acceleration of what you're doing. But there's something that's going to add to your life in a positive way, regardless of what area it ends up being. It's going to be different for everyone. The wheel doesn't tell us what area. It's not a certain suit. We don't get to know what it is. That's part of the element of surprise. That's why sometimes we have to actually pay attention. sometimes if we're so focused on one area of life, we may miss out on the wheel until afterwards, right? Have you ever seen like in a movie or like even experienced it where someone introduces someone and like, as the viewer, like, oh, that's the perfect person to help them with that thing that we saw earlier in the movie. And then the person just goes, oh, it's nice to meet you, and walks away. And you're like, are you an idiot? And then they get halfway home and they realize like, oh my God. And it's like back in the 90s before cell phones or social media. And then they'll find the person again, It's that sort of thing where it's like, actually pay attention, like slow down enough when you're in the moment of like meeting someone or, someone's telling you something to really hear what's being said, to really like pick up on the energy of it. I think the more we can be in our bodies, the more likely we're going to recognize what the wheel has to offer. And I think this time of year will be really magical because it's before we start, looking at the new year. Really, we're just starting to feel into that energy. So it may actually shape what decisions we make going forward into 2026.
I really like that card for this energy because I think that in some ways, October, November, and December kind of flow as a little bit of a package deal, but in particularly because of these connections that these planets just keep making. The first one I really want to talk about is Uranus, because while we had Saturn and Neptune build that peak mid-July, once that started to fade out, in the background we have these three kind of peak moments for Uranus, not as extreme as what we experienced in July. But the first, of course, is Uranus and Neptune kind of helping each other out in some ways. They're helping us to see the brighter future. But then we have Pluto go trine with Uranus. So again, this is right towards the end of October. It's reminding us that there's a bigger vision than we can sometimes see or imagine. I think this could be a very enlightening and beautiful energy to October and November, because then Neptune backs into Pisces, of course, like we talked about the end of October. Then Uranus backs into Taurus, the 7th of November. And right before this is a feeling and a connection between Mars moving into Sagittarius. And I say that because at this time of year, particularly November, December, we get wrapped up in how busy things are. We get excited about planning. And what is that going to look like when Uranus is having us move back into Taurus, back into these structures that it maybe didn't fully electrify, break down? Is this going to be financially involved somehow? Are we looking at working together more globally, right? Mars has us looking at things in a bigger picture sort of way, which we haven't experienced with this tail end of Taurus yet. I think there's something at play in the background there, because we also have the full moon in Taurus on the 5th. And to think that this is happening just before Uranus backs into Taurus, just to me, as an astrologer, feels very much like there's something yet here to be illuminated financially, maybe in terms of climate, or what is the world experience. Like there's just something else there that's going to come up. We also have Venus entering Scorpio at the same time. Again, this is illuminating emotions and secrets and things coming to play. By the 9th, we have Mercury in Sagittarius going retrograde. This, again, is going to have a feeling of illumination. It's going to back into Scorpio, right where we have Venus, again, amplifying those hidden aspects. We have Jupiter going retrograde. And then the new moon in Scorpio 2 days after it backs in. So to me, this is about aligning your mindset with not only what you're thinking and feeling, but with those parts of ourselves that we aren't always willing to put on display. How can I dig into the mysteries of life. What does it mean to be here? What am I worth? What's really worth fighting for working towards? Is it money? Yes, it does rule finances, but it also rules sex, because that's a connection that we make that's valuable beyond so many other tangible things in some way. Now, on the 21st, we'll have the sun entering Sagittarius. This is that classic holiday pickup where things get excited. By the 27th, Saturn will go direct. At this point, it's in Pisces, but now it's going to be moving forward, followed on the 29th by Mercury going direct, followed on the 30th by Venus going into Sagittarius. So while the first probably 2/3 of the month feel a little bit emotionally charged, I would say. Again, I always get that instant image from Spirit of the water on fire. Like knowing that I need to move to safety, that I need to make changes, that I'm looking out for myself and my loved ones, and I'm willing to go to bat for them, but also trying to keep things on an even keel, like trying to find the smoothness. The opposite of Scorpio is Taurus, and it wants that stability and the ease and the beauty, but it only can happen once that inner turmoil is sort of rooted out and some of those systems are set in place that allow for that beauty and that calm. So, talking about the wheel, what are you going to take? Are you going to miss the opportunity because it didn't look the way you expected? It didn't feel the way you expected. Like, is this compromise because it's not exactly what I want, but I guess it could work? We have to move into that both and mindset. It's not just this or that. This is about embracing, yes, it might look different and it might not come in the package we expected, but is it still moving us forward on that wheel of progression in some way?
I feel like that energy at the end of the month of like things picking up finally with everything going direct makes a lot more sense now of why this card came up for December. So I pulled our dear friend, the Knight of Swords. So this has come up recently, and the realization that we had around it was that we really do have to trust that there is something that's going to help push us forward. Once we start running, it's like that's when the motorcycle appears, or the thing that's going to carry us forward or be a catalyst for us will meet us. But we have to start running first. And it's almost like even a strong breeze could just like move you forward. And even once you're on the motorcycle, maybe it picks up again. But I think there's that energy of as soon as that wheel shows up and you know what the thing is and you take the opportunity, it's like take it and run with it is the exact phrase that I would use for this energy, is like take that and run with it and just see how far you can get. And I think because it's in the energy around the holidays and we already have kind of that energy of like, anything can happen, that sort of like colors the way that we're seeing things already. Like we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but as long as the momentum's there and you're not forcing it, if it's happening naturally and things are aligning for you to keep going, then there's no reason why you need to hold back. And I think because we're going into the end of the year, it's like it's setting yourself up. Again, 25, 26 are a package deal for the 2 years. So it's like not really like there's a hard end in the middle and then there's all of a sudden a new year. Same with it being a 9-year into a 1 year. We're already in that energy. Like that one energy is already here. It's like one long 2-year long year. So the traditional way we might think of like, oh, let's wrap up for the holidays, we'll pick it up in January. I don't think that's going to happen for most of us. I think we'll still fit in the family commitments that we have, but I think we're just going to continue through as if there was no separation. Like it's just going to be a continuous flow. And I think that's why the Knight of Swords is coming here. Like I think if it was a normal year and we had different energy showing up, we might tend to do that, to be like, okay, I'll take this opportunity, or maybe I'll ask them if I can put it off till January. But that's not what we want to do. We want to take it while it's here and just treat it like any other time of year, like in the middle of the summer or like in the spring, like what would you do in a different season if it wasn't November, if it wasn't December, what would you do? And I think the fact that we see a lot of mirrors between the two solstice periods, with like how the energy shows up, and even how we were talking about how like Gemini feels very different from Sagittarius, but I do feel like Cancer and Capricorn, that check-in with the energy and like that continuation actually feels pretty similar. It's just sort of like two sides of the same coin. And maybe it's because I have both those placements, so I'm just hanging out in it. Maybe for other people, it feels a lot more jolting. But what I'm feeling with this, like I said, is like that this Knight of Swords is coming to make sure that we don't slow down and we don't lose momentum. It's like you're not going to have a choice, like whether it's like people booking you to do something that's like, you know, right at the end of the year, or someone making you commit already to something, you know, that's going to make you have to work through the season a little bit more than you normally would. And this is exactly what I was feeling when Emily was talking about all of that water energy of like the ability to sacrifice. Because maybe we haven't had something we're willing to sacrifice for in the last while, but this is the first time that you're going to be like, you know what, if it means I don't get to go to all the parties, if it means that I only like make time for the people that are the most important to me over the holidays, it's going to be so much more worth it when I get to next year and I start to see what I'm building grow, versus why would I stagnate myself now and just hope that I can pick it up again. It's a lot harder to move from being stagnant than it is to just keep going. And I think that's why it's almost like the thing that'll move you forward is going to show up and you're not going to be able to say no to it. It'll be like a lot of money, or it'll be, you know, the person you've been trying to connect with all year. It's like there's something that's going to really help you. And it could even be another person that's helping you. That's like, you know what, if it's too much for you, I'll help you, but we have to do it now because I'm busy next year. So we need to do this now before I start my new project or something. But whatever it is, it feels very positive. And it feels like sort of what Emily was saying, how October, November, December kind of fit together, where like up to September, we are moving forward, but it's like we're just kind of waiting on that right thing. And then all of a sudden we have the Six of Wands, we have the victory. It's like, okay, yes, this is the right path. We have the wheel. Here you go. Here's the next opportunity. Here's the Knight of Swords. Keep it going. Like it's that sort of way of finishing out the year in a really positive way that is the one energy. We have the wheel, which is the 10, which is like a 1. And so we've had all this energy of the 9, like clearing out energy, double checking, you know, feeling into it again, sort of the hesitant movement forward. But this is the point where it's like, no, you're in the new energy now and you're just going to keep going. There's no looking back. There's no need to like drag things back from the past that we might feel as like our safety blanket. We need to just keep moving forward. You're not going to, again, like you're not going to on a motorcycle, you know, start trying to like drag stuff along with you. You can only take so much with you. So don't bring extra baggage that you don't need. Just keep going with the energy while it's flowing naturally.
We've talked a couple of times through the first part of this year about 2025 feeling like the halftime show. Like we experienced 2020 and we're like, oh, we're in a whole new game. And we're down quite a few points on the home team. And 2025 came in and it's like, okay, hold up. We're going to have a song and dance routine. We're going to teach you something. And I feel like this is a moment where the figures on stage are starting to shift. It's like, okay, everybody in act 1 off the stage. Don't forget your stuff. Keep the momentum, keep the excitement going, but we're bringing on the next act. So we're trying to do it as flawlessly, seamlessly as possible. One of the things that we can say about this December, it's the first time in 3 years that we have not had Mercury retrograde during the holidays. That is going to feel and make the holidays feel so much different than they have. We will have it retrograde over Thanksgiving, so just be aware if you do any traveling, it can sometimes bring that up, particularly because it's going to retrograde into Sagittarius, which is more long distance travel. But we're also going to have in December 3 squares. The first one I want to talk about is, these are all having to do with Mars. Mars is going to kind of get into some arguments with Neptune, where it's going to have us questioning, like, is this what I'm willing to, like, I've worked all year for this one gift or this one party. Was it worth it? It's like a gut check in some way. That Knight of Wands, like, am I willing to go forward with this, or am I going to change my mind? It's also Mars is going to go square with Saturn. So again, this is responsibility. Who are my dreams winning, or are the structures and systems that I've put in place winning? Is it enough? What does the foundation look like? And this is all happening while Mars is in Sagittarius. And why I bring that up is because each zodiac pair work in polarities. And you were talking about Sagittarius versus Gemini, and we have kind of a Gemini heavy year with Uranus moving in. We're activating a lot of that air energy, where Gemini is willing to change its mind about every 2.5 seconds. Sagittarius is like, yeah, I'm willing to change, but prove to me that it's worth fighting for first. Right? This is also the sign of religion. So it's not afraid to take a stand for what it believes in, but sometimes it can go too far. And so what I want to kind of highlight with that Mars in Sagittarius is, are you being the martyr? Are you being the victim? Have you thrown yourself on the stake? Or are you willing to kind of make, yet again, compromise? We're being really tasked with that idea through the fall, that October, November, December energy. On the 4th, we're going to have the full moon in Gemini. So this is where it might illuminate that idea that you're like, ooh, this is new and shiny and exciting. What can happen, particularly in December, is that we get distracted. We're like, yes, I need entirely new Christmas decorations, and I'm going to start from scratch, and I got to have a color scheme and go crazy. Where by the time we get to Capricorn at the end of the month, we're like, why? Why did I buy this peacock feather Christmas tree that I thought I needed? It makes zero sense. Now, December 10th, Neptune is going to go direct. At this point, remember, it has backed into Pisces, so this will be its final little usher hurrah out in the next couple of months. The 11th, Mercury is going to be into Sagittarius. That's going to give you that fiery, willing to go to battle for something else. This is the spicy holiday energy, but it's also fun. Sagittarius loves a party. On the 15th, Mars enters Capricorn. And I only say that because Mars in Capricorn is going to say, do you really need to do that? Like, let's get sensible about things. So just recognize that that energy that sometimes doesn't come until the 21st or solstice may start to creep in a little bit earlier, mid-month. But that's okay. We can still have a sober holiday season and move forward in ways that are really responsible. Like, I haven't done X, Y, and Z for 3 years. I'm going to lean into what I need to feel fulfilled and make this worth it in some way. On the 19th, we have a new moon in Sagittarius. So again, let it sort of awaken you to what you're willing to release that's no longer serving you in terms of those wild ideas. And what are you willing to stick with that's new and something that you can really hang your hat on. I always think of Sagittarius as having the bulletin board of like, no, these are my core beliefs. Sometimes I change them out, but it's there so they can see it. This moon could help you with that, again, on the 19th. On the 21st, we have Jupiter, again, square Chiron. This is where that connection that we talked about in October comes back up in some way. At the end of October, you may have made a decision to move through a wound, or maybe it held you in place, or something about these two moments are going to be connected. It's a little hard to say why. I think we'll be able to dial it down a little more direct when we get closer. But it's almost as if there is a portal of some sort between that end of October and that end of December. This is also solstice, right? This is kind of no irony that this is happening at the same exact moment that the sun is moving into Capricorn. We're being asked to look at this wound in some way. And then on the 24th, we have Venus entering Capricorn. And then on the 1st, Mercury enters Capricorn. So this is where we get that grounding, beautiful energy that's going to carry us into the new year. and help us ground after this October, November, December. It doesn't feel anything like the storm we had through the rest of the year, but it definitely feels like it's going to be pushing you enough to look at things in ways and be willing to make some of those adjustments that you might not have had you not gone through the grief. Had you not put in the work and said, I recognize that we're not going back to that. What can I instead get excited about? What am I willing to move forward with anyway? That is our second half of 2025, inviting the shadow. And that puts us right into winter solstice and waiting for the sun to come back up. And for so many of these changes that we've just started to experience to really start to take hold in 26. And that's where I think some of the magic will start to unfold. What are you picking up intuitively?
I definitely feel like what was showing up in my head is that like this December energy especially is like when we can finally trust that we're in that newer energy. And I think that solstice will really solidify it. But it feels like the one energy, like 2026 is going to be a 1 year. And like I said, the 9 year always picks up on that energy because nothing changes overnight. It takes time. But I think this is where we're more firmly in that energy and again, I feel like it crosses over. It's not like after January 1st, all of a sudden we're going to start to feel it. It's like it's already there. That's what December is for. December is making us feel very sure in that energy so that by the time the new year gets going and maybe all the people that are on their, new year kick, you're still going to be able to use that energy going into it. But I do feel like people are going to be starting a lot of new things this fall, like whether it's moving, new jobs, businesses, projects, collaborations. Like there's a lot in that like October, November that's going to be setting up a lot of that. I think a lot of it's starting in July. Like I think the main characters or the main pieces are showing up there, but the actual movement of like, it's going to take most of the summer into like September to figure it out, that Virgo planning energy of like, okay, do we have all the pieces together before we can actually do this? But once we turn that switch and we say, yeah, I'm doing it, and we commit to it, that's where that one energy really picks up, is that like October, November, December. And by December, it's like we're already in it. There's no turning back. We're in it.
So interesting. The Chinese zodiac for next year is the year of the fire horse. So it's the year of the horse, and it also the element of fire. So that just really speaks to that like energetic, independent, passionate, willing to go after things, because I think we're going to have the direction we want to go. So I really think we just kind of have to figure out and recalibrate. A lot of 25 is dealing with the things that have been good enough.
Yes.
We had the side of the house held up with some plywood and the, kind of wonky things holding things together. And it's like, listen, that wall has got to go. The water is coming in. We just have to let that side go. Yes, Grandpa Joe built this amazing wall and we love him. And we also have to expand. We have a growing family. We have things we need to do that move us in directions that I think will make sense to us, but I don't think we're going to catch as much external flack as we maybe have in the past. That feeling of, you're going to do what? It's like, oh, okay, well, good luck, have fun, send a postcard, without some of that judgment that we maybe used to get in the past. There was a beautiful clap of thunder in the middle of that speech.
It was highlighting it. It was like emphasizing the point. I think too, like you said, I think that is a big shift in our own momentum, is like the more we realize that there's not as much judgment or expectation or resistance around us. And I think some of it might be just our own perception where we're just not paying attention to it. And some of it might be the people at this point, by the end of the year, with whatever changes you're making in like July and like with that sort of energy, at that point, they're going to be like, well, she's doing it. Again, once the momentum is there, they're like, it's happening. There's no point in even interjecting at this point because there's just too much already in play. And I think that works in our favor going into 2026 with something that's already happening. I feel like sometimes if we don't have any distinct movement happening at the end of the year, I'm using air quotes, like if we at end of December, it does really set us up in a way where like when you're making your New Year's resolutions, it is not based on anything that's already in motion. It's not based on anything you already have in your sights. You're just making something up for the sake of having a goal. And then it's disappointing because this imaginary thing that you weren't really that connected to doesn't happen. And then it can make you stay stagnant longer, I feel like. I think the years when I've had the clearest goals are the years it's taken me the longest to get going because I am waiting for a sign on that specific thing. Meanwhile, there's probably like 10 or 11 things that probably were meant for me or probably would have been a good move forward that I ignored or said, no, I'm waiting for something for this random goal that I pulled out of thin air. Whereas I think the beauty of having the 1 year kind of start at the end of 2025 is that we're already in it. So there's nothing that's going to slow us down going into the new year. And if anything, the feeling that I get if I'm going to feel into 2026 is that by the time the spring eclipses hit, we're actually going to be at a place where it's going to be like setting us up to have the abundance come in so that we can rest and feel good about resting. I think that is the energy I feel. It could just be wishful thinking, but I do actually feel that. I think we've done so much of the movement, and especially at the end of this year, going into the beginning of next year, I think there's a lot of energy of effort. And I think the funny part that comes into me is I think the last few years, a lot of the work has been mental and spiritual and internal. And I think we're not used to the hard work of like physically going out and doing stuff in person. So like even a one meeting in person feels like 10 times more exhausting than like being online now. So I think if you're starting anything in person with people, in people's energy again, we are going to need to rest by the time spring comes around. It's energizing, so it's easy to keep going when you're in the momentum, but I think we're not used to being that kind of tired because we haven't. I mean, a lot of people are working in fields where they're busy and they're physically active, but I just mean in that terms of like anybody who's starting in a new direction that they haven't been in. So it could be the opposite. Some people might have been doing physical work and now they're going into something that's a little bit more, emotionally draining, or it might be a different thing, but it's just that changing the momentum and like using a different part of your energy is the exhausting part, but I think it's going to pay off huge when it comes to the new year. I have this feeling like around that eclipse energy that it's going to be bringing in some like clear abundance. And then I just feel like there's the ability to rest by the time solstice comes around next year. It just feels like a very different energy from this year.
I think it was really interesting that you were talking, and forgive me if it was this episode or was the answer there, blurring several hours in today. But we talked about like journaling, and not just journaling like X, Y, and Z happened, but like the need to fill pages, right? I need to write 3 pages every day and just get them out. And you start to surprise yourself with what comes out. And why I'm saying that is I think it's going to be really important to document, like we talked about this time frame. But one of the things I noticed, particularly in 2025, was the first time there was like a really big movement to not make resolutions. It was like, I'm going to wait till the zodiac year, or I'm going to pick a word. I'm going to like give it a little time and feel into it. It was not like I have to start this on January 1st. And I think between that little tick in energy that started at the beginning of the year, kind of really paying attention to what you're internalizing and changing through the middle to end, is going to set you up automatically, like you said, for this new goal/direction that doesn't, again, necessarily have a January starting date, but is already built in as like, this is where I'm headed. And I'm on the horse, right? We're leaving the snake. I've shed the skin, the water, all of that I'm leaving behind, and I'm moving into this fire horse energy. And we've got, Pluto in air and Neptune in fire and Uranus in air and Saturn in fire. So they've got all of that push to move through what could have been some of the mental blocks, but also the willingness to change our friggin' minds. We've been so locked in this or that. And as a Taurus, like hands up, I raise my hand. Uranus and Taurus, it's a fixed sign. We will hold on to the fact that no, we have to wait for the garden to. I can't pick the tomato when it's green. You have to wait. there's a stubbornness that comes with it, but it can also lead us all to staying in a rut longer than we needed to. Um, so yeah, I completely agree with what you're seeing. And for me, when I also feel a connection to the eclipses, but for me, it's the eclipses in the fall of 2026 when I feel like there'll be a collective inhale and exhale. But I do think they're going to start to be connected. We're moving away from that Virgo and into Pisces. We talked at the beginning of what it looked like when we moved from Libra and Aries, where the nodes were, where we were sacrificing so much for relationships that simply weren't fulfilling. They weren't allowing us to be who we actually are now. And so now that we've got that, we have to lean into the trust and rediscover this version of ourselves and what we want and what we need. So I think by the end of next year, we will really have an idea of where this horse is carrying us. Hopefully there's multiples. It's not just a chariot. I need a full set of horses all going in the same direction. And that is chariot nonsense with two directions. But yeah, I'm shall we say it, cautiously optimistic.
I think I'm like firmly optimistic. I think I'm just gonna lean in this time. I do, because everything's so up in the air. It's like there's only one direction it can go at this point. I think I still am always cautious by nature on the day-to-day individual things, but I think when I look at the big picture and I feel into it, yes, it is a little exhausting thinking it could be this time next year when we're still having some of the evidence show up, but I do think we're going to be seeing it. I think, like Emily said, maybe the rest is going to come later in the year, but I think the abundance that makes it worthwhile is going to have to start showing up in the spring for us to continue and to keep pushing. So I think there'll be like a burst of some sort of like, even if it's just a short period of time where you get a little bit of rest, it'll be like, here's the abundance, here's something unexpected that will help you out to help, make things a bit easier for the next while. And speaking of the words for the year, mine for the last 2 years has actually been my middle name, Lee, but it's spelled Lea, because I've had love, ease, abundance, and that was gifted to me from Spirit. And I just held on to it. So I was like, I haven't really seen a whole lot of any of that, the last couple of years. But I think it was that reminder. Again, it takes time to get to that state. So I'm probably going to bring it through with me to next year and have it be for the 3rd year. But I think it's like everything we do, like even when you think of an eclipse cycle, it's 6 months, and it's 18 months altogether. And like it is a long-term vision that you have to have sometimes with those sorts of transits and those sorts of goals that you have for yourself. It's not going to happen overnight. Sometimes the biggest piece that you need will show up overnight, but you have to commit to the long term. And I'm just feeling very positive. I am feeling optimistic that by this time next year, we'll be having a very different conversation. And I'm just going to stick to it. That's where I'm going to be stubborn. I'm going to be like, no, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be great. And I'm just going to keep going.
I love it. I really am optimistic about it too. I think we're going to kind of have to fall in love with a new reality. And so what you choose to do with that on an individual basis can leave you kind of run over by the steam engine, or you can catch up and go on the ride. And yeah, there'll be those that are willing and those that aren't. And you get to pick. You get to pick what you want to be excited about and what you're willing to. Oh, I have that image in my brain. Thanks, Spirit.
I hope Peyton listens to this because we always talk about trains, but I have this vision of like, when you were talking about it, it was like, I have this vision of like some people riding the rails, like jumping on and like getting in the cars, and then people waiting for stuff to fall off the train, just see what's gonna fall off and just like hope for the best. And it's like, I don't know, I think I'm gonna run and try and hop on because I'm tired. And at least it's, again, that Knight of Wands energy of moving you forward, right? You could walk alongside the trail if you're not going to trust it and like walk beside the tracks and hope something falls off to help you. But I think it's probably a lot faster and a lot less energy to just get with it. Just hop on and let it take you.
The party car.
And you'll sack. Hope for the best.
That's the Fool with his wand and
I'm going to be the fool. I don't care how crazy it looks. I'm being the fool going into 2026.
Thank you all for listening. We know this is a commitment to listen to this episode, but hopefully, you can start to plan your fall, feel a little bit more involved in what's coming, and really understand how to ride some of the waves, because it is still an emotionally and energetically charged year. But we thank you so much, as always, for listening. There is a beautiful guidebook that goes with this episode. You can download it for free. Both of us have links. There'll be links in the show notes, links on our Instagram, on our website, all the places where you can download not only a synopsis of the astrology for each month, but the tarot card that Andrea pulled and some of her wisdom. And yeah, some other little journaling prompts and things. That's our gift to you for listening and being such wonderful, wonderful companions in this crazy, wacky world. And we thank you as always. And gosh, I can't believe we're not going to record until January, but we'll see you in December and January for Gaining Light.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's hope that it's a different reality by the time we get there and we have lots of exciting things to tune into.
I love it. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.